The Ashes of Empire by Erwin Montrose, the lost manuscript. The dim light of the study lamp cast long shadows across the room, flickering gently as Dr. Eliza Monroe leaned over her grandfather's old leather-bound journal. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and dust, and outside the rain tapped softly against the window, a soothing rhythm to her growing curiosity. "What secrets did you hide, grandfather?" she murmured, her fingers tracing the faded ink on the cover. The name, Dr. William Monroe, was embossed in gold, barely visible under the wear of time. Eliza carefully opened the book, her eyes scanning the pages filled with her grandfather's precise handwriting. She paused at a particular entry, her heart skipping a beat as she read the words Manhattan Project and Sabotage. "This can't be true," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the patter of rain. The journal hinted at a conspiracy, a deliberate attempt to derail the historical project that had changed the course of history. Her pulse quickened as she flipped through the pages, each one revealing more about the mysterious plot that had claimed the lives of several physicists in 1939, including her grandfather's closest colleagues. "I have to know more," she decided, her voice firm with resolve. She reached for her phone to call her trusted colleague, Dr. Marcus Hale, a historian who specialized in World War II anomalies. "Eliza, what's going on? It's late," Marcus answered, his voice warm but tinged with concern. "Marcus, I think I found something big," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "My grandfather's journal, it talks about a conspiracy to sabotage the Manhattan Project." "A conspiracy?" "Eliza, you know how many theories are out there, right?" "I know, but this is different. It's detailed, with names and dates. It's like a map to something we've never considered." There was a pause, the silence stretching between them as Marcus absorbed the information. "All right, let's say it's true. What do you plan to do?" "I want to investigate further. We need to find out if there's any truth to this and what it could mean for our understanding of history." "Eliza, be careful. If there's any truth to this, there could be people who don't want it uncovered." Eliza squared her shoulders, her mind made up. "I can't ignore this, Marcus. It's too important." "All right, but promise me you'll keep me in the loop. We should approach this carefully." "I promise. Thanks, Marcus. I'll update you as soon as I find anything." As she ended the call, Eliza felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The journey she was about to embark on was fraught with uncertainty, but the truth, she believed, was worth any risk. The next morning, Eliza stood in the archives of the local library, surrounded by towering shelves filled with history's forgotten stories. Her heart raced as she sifted through documents and old newspapers, searching for any mention of the names and events her grandfather had recorded. "Can I help you find something, Dr. Monroe?" asked the librarian, a kindly woman in her 60s, peering curiously over her glasses. "Yes, I'm looking for any information on the Manhattan Project around 1939, especially anything unusual or related to any accidents." "Ah, that's a bit of a dark era. Not much was documented openly, but let's see what we can find." She led Eliza to a section filled with microfilms and newspapers. Hours passed as Eliza painstakingly combed through the records, her eyes burning from the strain. Just as she was about to call it a day, an article caught her attention, a small piece buried in the back of a 1939 newspaper, mentioning a mysterious fire at a research facility. "There you are," she whispered to herself, jotting down the details. It was a lead, a thread to pull at in this tangled web of history. With renewed determination, a shadow in Alt-Berlin, the train rattled through the fog-draped countryside, its rhythmic clatter a steady heartbeat against the tension building within Eliza Monroe. As the iron serpent slithered closer to Alt-Berlin, a city split by the iron will of superpowers and the weight of history, Eliza's mind raced with questions and doubts. "I have to see this through," she whispered to herself, clutching the worn leather satchel that held her grandfather's manuscript. The pages had led her here, across oceans and borders, into the heart of a divided city, teetering on the brink of something she could only begin to comprehend. Alt-Berlin was a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, its narrow alleys twisting like the tendrils of a great beast. The cityscape was a canvas of contrasts, old stone edifices standing defiantly against the encroaching modernity of concrete and steel. As Eliza disembarked at the Hauptbahnhof, she felt the weight of eyes upon her, unseen yet palpable. Stay focused, she reminded herself, weaving through the bustling crowd, the chatter of multiple languages forming a symphony of disorientation. The sky overhead was a sullen gray, casting a pall over the city that matched the mood of its inhabitants. Eliza pulled her coat tighter against the chill, her breath misting in the air as she navigated the maze of streets. Her instructions had been clear: meet the contact at the Kaff Morgenrot on the eastern edge of the city. But as she wound her way through the alleys, a sense of unease settled over her like a shroud. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow detach itself from the wall and follow her. But there was nothing, only the dim figures of strangers going about their lives in the perpetual twilight of uncertainty. Reaching the Kaff, she paused at the doorway, taking a calming breath before stepping inside. The interior was dimly lit, the air thick with the aroma of strong coffee and hushed conversations. She scanned the patrons, searching for a face that matched the description she'd been given. A man sat alone at a corner table, a newspaper held aloft like a shield. His eyes met hers briefly, a flicker of recognition passing between them. "Dr. Monroe, I presume," he said, lowering the paper to reveal a face lined with the marks of experience and caution. "You must be Dmitri Reznikov," she replied, taking the seat opposite him. Dmitri nodded, his eyes scanning the room with the wariness of a man accustomed to danger. He leaned forward, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "You are not safe here, Eliza. The city is rife with spies and informants. They know you are looking for answers." "Then I'll have to be more careful," she countered, her resolve hardening. "You have your grandfather's spirit," he noted, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. Eliza felt a pang of emotion at the mention of her grandfather, the man whose secrets had brought her to this fractured city. "What can you tell me about the manuscript? Your grandfather was onto something significant, a conspiracy that reaches into the highest echelons of power, but there are those who would do anything to keep it buried." As Dmitri spoke, Eliza's eyes were drawn to the window, where a figure lingered just beyond the glass, watching. "We're being watched," she whispered, her pulse quickening. "Stay composed," he advised, his demeanor unchanged. "We can't let them know we're aware." Eliza nodded, her mind racing. She needed to stay one step ahead, but the path was fraught with danger. "I can help you," Dmitri offered, his gaze steady. "But you must trust me, and we must act quickly." "Why would you help me?" she asked, searching his face for any sign of deceit. "Because your grandfather saved my life once, and because the truth matters," he replied, his voice laced with conviction. Echoes of sabotage, the dim glow of the streetlights barely pierced through the heavy fog that blanketed Alt-Berlin. The city's divided heart was still, save for the distant hum of a tram and the occasional barking of stray dogs. Eliza and Dmitri stood in the shadow of a crumbling archway, their breaths visible in the chill night air. "Are you sure this is the right building?" "It has to be. The map from the manuscript points exactly here." She pulled the aged paper from her coat pocket, the edges frayed from countless readings. "This is our only chance to find the truth." Their target was an unassuming structure nestled between two larger, more modern edifices. The Soviet Archive, a fortress of secrets, held documents that could unravel the conspiracy behind the failed Manhattan Project. "I've heard stories about what happens to those who get caught sneaking around here." "Then we won't get caught." She kept her voice steady, though her heart raced with a mix of fear and anticipation. Silently, they moved towards the building. Dmitri produced a set of lockpicks, his hands steady and practiced. The lock yielded with a faint click. "We're in." Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old paper and dust. Rows of filing cabinets stretched into the darkness, an endless labyrinth of bureaucratic records. "We need the files from 1939. Anything mentioning the scientists or the project." She moved quickly, her fingers brushing over the labels. Time was against them. Every echo of their footsteps seemed magnified, as if the very walls were listening. "Here, this section. It's labeled Special Projects." They rifled through the folders, the soft rustle of paper the only sound in the oppressive silence. Look, this one mentions Dr. Langley. She pulled out a file, eyes scanning the pages. There's a list of high-ranking officials and notes on unexpected accidents. Eliza, we need to move. I think I heard something. Just then, the distant clatter of boots on tile reached their ears. A security patrol, closer than they had anticipated. We have to go. Now. Clutching the files, they retraced their steps, hearts pounding in sync with the approaching footsteps. The exit loomed ahead, their salvation. Hurry. As they burst through the door into the night, a shout rang out behind them. A guard had spotted their escape. Stop! But there was no time to stop. They sprinted down the alley, their path veiled by the persistent fog. We can't let them catch us. We have what we came for. The chase was on, their pursuers' voices echoing in the narrow streets. Eliza and Dmitri ducked into a side street, their breaths ragged, every instinct urging them to keep moving. There's a safe house nearby, just a little further. With the stolen documents clutched tightly, they pushed through the fog, the promise of safety just around the corner. We can do this. She glanced at Dmitri, a shared determination in their eyes. As the final corner, the nondescript door of the safe house came into view. Behind them, the shouts grew fainter, swallowed by the night. We're almost there. With a final burst of energy, they reached the door. Dmitri fumbled with the key, and they tumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind them. We made it. In the dim light of the safe house, they collapsed against the walls, breathless but victorious. The documents lay between them, the key to a conspiracy that had changed the course of history. We did it. We really did it. This is just the beginning. We need to get these to the right people. As they caught their breath, the weight of their discovery settled over them. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they had taken the first step towards exposing the truth. We'll make sure they know, for the scientists, for everyone. Desert of shadows. As the scorching sun dipped below the horizon, the bustling streets of Cairo transformed into an unpredictable theater of shadows and whispers. The city's DMZ, a place of tenuous ceasefire and whispered secrets, lay ahead like a labyrinthine riddle. Eliza Monroe was determined to solve. Keep your eyes open, Dmitri, Eliza cautioned, her voice barely rising above the murmur of the crowd. The two moved with purpose, their figures blending into the throng of merchants and refugees that filled the dusty marketplace. I always do, Dmitri replied, scanning the horizon with the eyes of a hawk. But this place, it's alive with eyes and ears. They weave through the marketplace, the air thick with the scent of spices, sweat, and the underlying tension that never truly dissipated. Eliza's contact, a former scientist who had defected from the project, was somewhere within this chaotic tapestry. His name is Dr. Yusuf, Eliza whispered as they edged closer to a dimly lit caf, the agreed meeting point. He's supposed to have information on the sabotage. They entered the caf, its interior a smoky haze. Patrons huddled in quiet conversations. Eliza's eyes adjusted to the dim light, searching for the man who held secrets of the past. Miss Monroe, over here, a voice called from a secluded corner. Dr. Yusuf, an older man with weary eyes and a cautious demeanor, motioned them over. Dr. Yusuf, Eliza greeted, her voice a mix of relief and urgency. Thank you for meeting us. Time is of the essence. I know, and I wish I could offer more time, Dr. Yusuf replied, glancing around as if expecting shadows to spring to life. But what I have is crucial. They leaned in as Dr. Yusuf began to speak, his words a lifeline of information unraveling in the dim glow of a solitary lamp. The sabotage was orchestrated by factions within the Allied forces, he revealed, his voice barely above a whisper. They feared the power they were unleashing. Internal sabotage? Dmitri questioned, his brows furrowed. I thought it was the work of the Axis. No, it was us, Dr. Yusuf insisted, urgency lacing his words. There are documents hidden in a vault beneath the old British embassy. They contain everything you need to expose this. Before Eliza could press for more details, the caf door swung open with a violent crash, and the patrons fell silent. A group of men, armed and menacing, stormed inside, their eyes scanning the room with predatory intent. Dmitri, we need to move, Eliza breathed, her heart pounding like a war drum. They slipped out the back, the alleyway, a narrow escape route veiled in shadows. The sounds of chaos erupted behind them as the men began tearing through the caf. This way, Dmitri urged, leading Eliza through a series of twisting alleys, each turn a calculated move to evade their pursuers. The city seemed to pulse with danger, each shadow a potential threat. They sprinted through passageways, past crumbling walls and forgotten relics of a city caught between worlds. "How much further?" Eliza asked, her breath coming in short bursts. "Not much," Dmitri replied, his voice steady despite the urgency. "We just need to reach the old embassy." As they neared their destination, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them, growing louder, closer. An ambush was closing in, the city's underbelly revealing its teeth. "We need a distraction," Eliza said, scanning their surroundings for anything that could buy them time. "Over there." Dmitri pointed to a stack of crates precariously balanced against a wall. With a swift kick, he sent them tumbling into the alley, creating a barrier of chaos and debris. They dashed through the final stretch, the embassy looming ahead like a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching darkness. Behind them, shout, the architect's labyrinth. The moon hung low over Cairo, casting long shadows along the narrow alleyways that twisted like serpents through the city's ancient heart. Eliza Monroe and Dmitri Reznikov moved with purpose, their footsteps echoing softly against the cobblestones as they approached their destination. "Are you sure this is the place, Dmitri?" Eliza whispered, her eyes scanning the nondescript facade of the building hidden among the bustling streets. "This is it," Dmitri replied, a hint of excitement in his voice. "According to my contact, the entrance is just beyond that archway." They slipped through the archway, entering a courtyard cloaked in shadow. The air was thick with the scent of spices from a nearby market, but the usual chatter was absent, replaced by an eerie silence. "Keep close," Dmitri urged, leading Eliza towards a small, unmarked door nestled in the stone wall. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit staircase spiraling downward into the earth. They descended carefully, each step resonating with a hollow echo. "What do you think we'll find down here?" Eliza asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "If the legends are true, this is where the architect conducted his experiments," Dmitri replied, his eyes alight with curiosity. "Hidden from the world beneath the sands of Cairo." The staircase led them to a vast underground chamber, its walls lined with shelves of dusty tomes and mysterious apparatuses. The air was cool, carrying a faint hum of electricity. "Incredible," Eliza breathed, stepping forward to examine the strange devices. "This is like stepping into another world." "The architect was a genius," Dmitri said, running his fingers along a row of heavy books. "But his work was too dangerous, too ahead of its time." A sudden clatter echoed through the chamber, causing them both to freeze. From the shadows emerged a figure, cloaked and hooded, moving with a deliberate grace. "You seek the truth of the architect," the figure stated, their voice smooth and unhurried. "Who are you?" Eliza demanded, her hand instinctively reaching for the small pistol hidden in her coat. "A guardian of secrets," the stranger replied, lowering their hood to reveal a weathered face, eyes sharp and wise. "I have been waiting for someone like you." The stranger gestured towards a hidden passage, leading deeper into the labyrinthine complex. Without hesitation, Eliza and Dmitri followed, their curiosity piqued. "The work of the architect was not just scientific," the stranger explained as they walked. "It was a fusion of art and science, a dance of mathematics and mysticism." "What became of him?" Dmitri asked, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "He vanished," the stranger replied, a flicker of sadness passing across their features. "But his legacy remains, hidden from those who would misuse it." As they reached the end of the passage, the chamber opened into a vast hall, its ceiling disappearing into shadows above. In the center stood a massive apparatus, its surface humming with energy. "What is this?" Eliza asked, approaching the machine with wide eyes. "The heart of the labyrinth," the stranger said, their voice filled with awe. "The culmination of the architect's vision." Eliza reached out, her fingers brushing the cool metal. In that instant, a surge of understanding flooded her mind, images and equations flashing before her eyes in a dizzying array. "I can see it," she gasped, stepping back, her heart racing. "It's beautiful." Eliza, are you all right? Dmitri asked, steadying her with a firm grip. I'm fine, she assured, though her voice trembled slightly. It's just so much to comprehend. As they stood before the monumental machine, Eliza realized the enormity of their discovery. This was more than just a relic of the past. It was a beacon. New London intrigues. The rain drizzled persistently over the cobblestones of New London's narrow streets, casting a melancholic veil over the bustling city. Eliza Monroe pulled her coat tighter around her, the damp chill seeping into her bones as she navigated the maze-like alleys toward the clandestine meeting place. I hope Nuru's information is as revealing as Dmitri promised, she murmured to herself, the words barely audible over the rhythmic patter of rain. The alley opened into a hidden courtyard where a single lamp cast a dim glow over a small cafe. Eliza hesitated for a moment, glancing around to ensure she wasn't followed before stepping inside. Inside, the air was warm, thick with the aroma of brewed coffee and the subtle undercurrent of intrigue. Seated at a corner table, Nuru Okoye watched her approach, his sharp eyes betraying a mind always at work. "Dr. Monroe?" he greeted, his voice smooth yet charged with a quiet intensity. "I trust your journey was uneventful." "As uneventful as one could hope for in these times," she replied, taking the seat opposite him. "What have you uncovered?" "Quite a bit," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "These are transmissions I intercepted, encrypted but now decoded. They link several British officials to a network of war profiteering." Eliza opened the folder, her eyes scanning the pages filled with codes and names. Her heart quickened as she realized the implications. This is evidence of direct involvement in the conspiracy," she whispered, looking up at Nuru. "But how deep does it go?" "Deeper than we imagined," he replied, leaning in. "The British Empire has been orchestrating arms sales to both sides of the conflicts, profiting from the chaos they've helped create." A silence settled between them, punctuated only by the clinking of cups and the soft murmur of other patrons. Eliza felt the weight of the discovery pressing down on her, the enormity of it threatening to overwhelm. "We need to expose this," she declared, her voice firm. "But how do we proceed without alerting them?" "We must be cautious," he advised, his fingers steepled in contemplation. "The documents must be duplicated and sent to trusted allies discreetly. We can risk drawing attention until we have undeniable proof." As they plotted their next move, the cafe door swung open, bringing with it a gust of cold air and a figure cloaked in shadow. Eliza tensed, her instincts honed from months on the run. "Eliza Monroe," the figure announced, stepping into the light. His face was unfamiliar, but his presence exuded danger. "You've been making quite a name for yourself." "Who are you?" she demanded, her hand inching toward the concealed weapon in her bag. "A friend," he assured, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I've come to offer assistance, to help ensure this information reaches the right hands." Eliza glanced at Nuru, who nodded subtly, indicating they should hear the stranger out. "We re-listening," she said, her eyes never leaving the stranger. The man sat down, his demeanor composed yet alert. "My name is Thomas Hargrove," he began. "I represent a faction within the British government that opposes this profiteering. We want to see justice served as much as you do." "And why should we trust you?" Nuru asked, leaning back with a measured gaze. "Because I have as much to lose as you do," Thomas replied, his voice steady. "If this conspiracy continues, it could tear the world apart. We need to act now, together." Eliza exchanged a look with Nuru, weighing the risks and potential benefits. They were at a crossroads, one that could define the course of their mission. "All right, Thomas," she said finally. "We'll work with you, but on our terms. We need guarantees that this information will be used to dismantle the conspiracy." The Admiral's Gambit, the morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base in Marseille, the heart of the Franco-American Alliance's Mediterranean operations. Admiral Jean-Luc Garot stood in his office, gazing out at the restless sea, his mind a whirlpool of thoughts. "We cannot allow this to continue," he muttered, turning sharply to face his aide. "Sir, are you certain about deploying the agents? Eliza Monroe's activities might not pose a direct threat. Her findings could unravel the very fabric of our alliance. If she exposes the conspiracy surrounding the Manhattan Project's failure, It could destabilize everything we've built. Garrow's eyes flickered with determination as he paced the room, the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. He knew that in the world they had forged, secrets were as dangerous as weapons. Deploy Agent Leclerc and his team. They must intercept her before she reaches Paris. The aide nodded, exiting swiftly to relay the orders. Garrow watched him leave, his thoughts drifting to the years of war and the fragile peace they had carved out of chaos. He was not about to let one woman unravel it all. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit café in the heart of Marseille, Eliza Monroe sat across from Dmitry Reznikov. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and the murmur of secret conversations. "We have to get these documents to someone who can make a difference, Dmitry. The world needs to know." "And who would that be, Eliza?" "The very governments we re-exposing. They'd sooner silence us than see the truth come out." Eliza leaned in, her voice a whispered urgency. "What about Nuru Okoye? Her network could get this information to the right people." "Perhaps, but with every move we risk exposure. We were not just up against a few bureaucrats. Garrow will have his agents on us the moment we set foot in Paris." Eliza nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. The stakes were higher than ever, and every decision now could mean the difference between life and death. Then we outsmart them. We use the chaos to our advantage. Dmitry studied her face, searching for a hint of doubt, but found none. Her resolve was unshakable, and it was that very strength that made her both an asset and a target. Across the city, in a nondescript apartment, Agent Leclerc prepared his team. Maps and photographs covered the table, a tactical plan laid out with meticulous precision. "We know her route. The train to Paris leaves at dawn. We intercept her before she boards. What if she changes plans? She's proven elusive before." "She won't. Our sources have confirmed her contacts in Paris are waiting. She has no choice but to follow through." Leclerc's eyes narrowed as he scanned the room, ensuring every agent knew their role. Failure was not an option. As the first light of dawn crept over Marseille, Eliza and Dmitry made their way to the station, their movements cautious yet determined. "Once we're on that train, we can finally breathe. Let's hope we're not breathing our last." They reached the platform just as the whistle blew, the train a massive iron beast ready to pull them towards destiny. But as they stepped forward, Eliza felt it a prickle of eyes watching, shadows lurking. "Dmitry, wait!" Her instinct screamed, and she pulled him back, just as a group of men in civilian clothes moved towards them with purpose. "Leclerc's men, they found us. We need another way. Follow me." They darted through the crowd, weaving between travelers, their hearts pounding. Behind them, the agents gave chase, their orders clear capture at all costs. In a narrow alley behind the station, Eliza and Dmitry paused, catching their breath. "We can't keep this up forever, Eliza. We need a plan. We split up. You head to the safe house in the north. I'll lead them away." "No, we..." Secrets of the North. The air in Oslo Free City was crisp and biting, the kind that stung the face and invigorated the senses. Snow crunched underfoot as Eliza Monroe and Dmitry Reznikov navigated through narrow streets lined with towering, centuries-old buildings. Their breath puffed out in small clouds, mingling with the mist that hovered just above the cobblestones. "We need to find the library before it closes." "The archives there hold the key to everything," Eliza insisted, pulling her woolen scarf tighter around her neck. "Don't worry, Eliza. I've been here before. The library is just up ahead," Dmitry replied, his voice steady as he glanced at the map in his gloved hands. As they walked, the city's unique blend of old-world charm and modern intellectualism enveloped them. Oslo, declared a free city after the Great War, had become a sanctuary for scholars, artists, and thinkers from around the globe, an oasis of free thought amidst a turbulent world. "It's hard to believe a place like this exists," Eliza mused, her eyes wandering over the architecture, the spires and facades dusted with snow. "It's a rare gem. Here, ideas flourish without the chains of politics," Dmitry explained, his admiration for the city evident. They reached the grand entrance of the Oslo Free Library, a stone edifice with arched windows and doors that stood like a sentinel of knowledge. Eliza hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her as they stepped inside. This is it, she whispered, the vastness of the library stretching out before them, shelves towering to the ceiling, filled with books and manuscripts from every corner of the globe. We need to find the section on international scientific collaborations. The documents we need should be there, Dmitri said, leading the way through the labyrinth of aisles. As they delved deeper into the archives, the atmosphere turned solemn. The only sounds the rustle of pages and the soft footsteps of other researchers lost in their own quests for knowledge. Here, Eliza, Dmitri called softly, gesturing to a table piled high with yellowed papers and dusty tomes. These are the records of the original collaboration on nuclear technology. Let's see what we can find, Eliza replied, carefully sifting through the documents, her fingers tracing the faded ink. Hours passed as they worked, piecing together a tapestry of agreements, correspondences, and technical blueprints that painted a picture of groundbreaking ambition and covert sabotage. This is incredible, Eliza breathed, holding up a letter bearing the seal of a well-known physicist. It's as if these scientists were on the brink of something monumental before they were silenced. And now we know why they were stopped, Dmitri added, pointing to a document marked with a red stamp, classified for eyes only. The realization hit them like a cold wave. They were unraveling a conspiracy that had altered the course of history. We have to get this information out, Eliza stated firmly, her eyes meeting Dmitri's with determination. It's the proof we need. Agreed. But first, we must leave here undetected. The stakes are higher than ever, Dmitri cautioned, his voice low. As they prepared to leave, the sound of footsteps echoed ominously in the corridor outside the archive room. Someone's coming, Eliza whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. Stay calm. We can slip out through the side exit, Dmitri instructed, quickly gathering the most crucial documents. They moved swiftly, their path lit by the dim glow of the library's ancient lamps. The tension was palpable as they reached the side door, its hinges creaking in protest as they eased it open. Once outside, the cold night air wrapped around them like a shroud, but they were free, their prize clutched. The gathering storm, the air was thick with anticipation as Eliza Monroe stepped into the dimly lit chamber beneath the Alt Berlin ruins. The room was a relic of the old world, its stone walls echoing with the whispers of long-forgotten secrets. Flickering torches cast a warm glow over the faces of those assembled, each a representative of factions vying for power in this fractured city. Thank you all for coming, Eliza began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of urgency. What we discussed tonight could change the course of history. The gathered individuals exchanged wary glances. At the table sat Heinrich, a rugged figure of the German resistance, Fatima, representing the Middle Eastern coalition, and Arthur, a British defector with a sharp gaze. We've risked much to be here, Eliza. Let's hope it's worth it. I assure you it is, she replied, spreading a series of documents across the table. These are the findings from my journey evidence that ties the failed Manhattan Project to a conspiracy of global proportions. And why should we trust your evidence? Fatima questioned, her eyes narrowing. Each faction here has its own agenda. What makes you think we can unite under one cause? Eliza paused, understanding the gravity of the challenge before her. She knew the stakes were high and trust was scarce. Because the enemy we're facing isn't just a nation or a leader, it's a shadow network that spans continents. Alone, we're weak. Together, we stand a chance, Eliza implored, her voice carrying the fervor of her belief. Silence hung in the air as the weight of her words settled over the group. Arthur leaned forward, his interest piqued. These documents show us, he urged, his English accent cutting through the tension. Eliza nodded, distributing the papers. Each sheet detailed a piece of the puzzle she had painstakingly assembled, a map of connections between industrial magnates, military leaders, and scientists, all pointing towards a dark alliance. This could bring down the Franco-American alliance, Heinrich breathed, his eyes wide with disbelief. And with it, the balance of power shifts, Fatima mused, her mind racing with the possibilities. As the group absorbed the implications, the room buzzed with a newfound energy. Alliances, once thought impossible, began to take shape. We have the opportunity to stop them, Eliza continued, her voice rising with hope. But we need to act swiftly before they realize we're onto them. Just then, a sudden noise from the corridor outside interrupted their meeting. The sound of footsteps echoed, growing louder. "Someone's coming," Arthur warned, rising from his seat. The group sprang into action, gathering the documents in haste. "We need to leave now," Heinrich barked, motioning towards a hidden exit. Eliza and the others hurried, their hearts pounding as they slipped through the narrow passageway. The flickering torchlight cast shadows that danced along the stone walls, creating an atmosphere thick with suspense. "Who could it be?" Fatima whispered breathlessly as they navigated the twisting corridors. Eliza glanced back, her mind racing. The city's labyrinthine underbelly offered both refuge and danger. "It doesn't matter," she replied, her voice calm despite the urgency. "We have what we need. Now, we must regroup and plan our next move." As they emerged into the night, the cold air slapped against their faces, a stark reminder of the perilous world they inhabited. The city of Alt-Berlin lay sprawled before them, a patchwork of power and rebellion. "We can't let them win," Heinrich declared, his resolve hardening. "We've come too far to back down now." "And we won't," Eliza promised, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "This is just the beginning of the storm." With their unlikely alliance forged, an empire's reckoning. The air in Lagos was thick with anticipation, a palpable energy that buzzed from the crowded streets to the hidden alleys where plans were whispered under the veil of night. Nuru Okoye stood at the heart of this brewing storm, a resolute figure against the backdrop of colonial dominance. "The time has come, my friends," Nuru declared, his voice carrying over the hushed murmurs of the gathered crowd. "For too long, we have been the silent witnesses to the theft of our land and the suppression of our people." Around him, a sea of faces, each etched with stories of oppression and dreams of freedom, looked up with a mixture of hope and fear. "And now we have the means to fight back," Eliza Monroe added, stepping forward beside Nuru. Her presence was a testament to the unlikely alliances forged in the shadows of resistance. "The documents we've uncovered show the depths of their exploitation. It's time the world knows the truth." The crowd's response was a low rumble of agreement, growing in intensity like a distant storm rolling in from the sea. Eliza's revelations, meticulously gathered and smuggled out of guarded vaults, were now weapons in the hands of those who had known only silence. "We are not alone," Nuru continued, his eyes sweeping over the assembly. "All across Nigeria, all across Africa, the call for justice is being heard. Today, we stand not as subjects, but as sovereigns of our destiny." As Nuru spoke, it was as if the very earth beneath their feet trembled with the promise of change. The plan was audacious, yet desperate times called for daring actions. They would strike at the heart of colonial power, disrupting the very mechanisms that kept them in chains. "We must move quickly," Eliza urged, conscious of the ticking clock and the ever-watchful eyes of British agents. "The documents are our shield, but they also make us targets." The crowd dispersed into smaller groups, each with a mission, each a cog in the machine of rebellion. Nuru and Eliza remained, their eyes meeting with a shared understanding of the risks and the stakes. "Your help has been invaluable, Eliza," Nuru said, his voice softer now, touched with gratitude. "Without you, none of this would be possible." "I only hope it's enough," Eliza replied, her mind racing with the possibilities and the dangers that lay ahead. As the sun began to rise, casting long shadows over the city, the revolution was set in motion. Across Lagos, signals were sent, and allies rallied to the cause. The British Empire, vast and unyielding, would soon feel the tremors of dissent. In a hidden safe house, Nuru and Eliza pored over maps and plans, their weary eyes betraying the relentless drive that propelled them forward. Each step was fraught with peril, but there was no turning back now. "The people are ready," Nuru mused, tracing routes on a map with a steady finger. "But we need to ensure that our message reaches beyond these borders." "Leave that to me," Eliza assured, pulling out a battered radio transmitter. "I've made contacts in Alt-Berlin. The world will hear our story." The two worked in silence, the air around them charged with the weight of history. As the day wore on, the streets outside hummed with an undercurrent of rebellion, the city itself becoming a battleground of wills. Nightfall brought a sense of foreboding, as the first actions of defiance unfolded. British patrols found their routes blocked, their orders disrupted by a populace no longer willing to bow. "Remember, we fight not with weapons, but with the truth," Nuru reminded his followers, his voice a steady beacon in the gathering darkness. "Let the world see the strength of a united people." As news of the uprising spread, the British forces scrambled to regain control, their authority challenged by the very people they had sought to subdue. The Duel of Minds. As the clock struck midnight, the fog rolled in from the Thames, cloaking New London in a shroud of mystery. Eliza stood at the edge of the pier, her silhouette stark against the moonlit water, her thoughts as turbulent as the river before her. She knew that tonight's meeting with Admiral Garrow could change the course of history. "I have to know the truth," she murmured to herself, clutching the folder of documents tighter to her chest. The sound of footsteps echoed from the cobblestone street behind her, growing louder as they approached. Eliza turned to see a tall figure emerging from the mist. Admiral Jean-Luc Garreau, his uniform immaculate, contrasting with the shadows that seemed to cling to him like whispers of the past. "Dr. Monroe," he greeted, his voice smooth yet carrying an edge of steel. "It seems we are both drawn to the mysteries of the night." "Admiral Garreau," she replied, maintaining her composure, "I believe we have much to discuss." They stood facing each other, two minds poised for a battle of wits, each aware that the fate of nations might rest on the outcome of their conversation. "I must admit, your persistence in this matter is impressive," he said, gesturing toward the folder. "What exactly do you hope to achieve, Dr. Monroe?" "The truth," she answered simply, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "The world deserves to know what really happened to the Manhattan Project and why so many lives were sacrificed." "The truth," he echoed, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "A noble pursuit indeed, but truth is often a matter of perspective, is it not?" Eliza sensed the underlying challenge in his words, the subtle dance of power and manipulation. She had come prepared for this, having pieced together the fragments of a larger puzzle that hinted at Garreau's deeper motives. "And what is your perspective, Admiral? Why go to such lengths to cover up the past?" "Have you ever considered, Dr. Monroe, that some truths are buried for a reason?" he replied, his voice softening, hinting at a personal undercurrent. "The world is precariously balanced, and sometimes the weight of revelation can tip the scales into chaos." "You speak as if you have something to lose," she observed, her tone shifting to one of understanding. "What is it that drives you, Admiral? Is it truly allegiance to your alliance, or is there something more personal at stake?" Garreau hesitated, the veneer of command slipping momentarily to reveal a glimpse of the man beneath the uniform. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, now carried a shadow of regret. "I once had a family," he admitted quietly, the words carrying the weight of untold sorrow. "A wife, a daughter, casualties of a world at war. My actions, my choices, are not just for a nation, but for a memory I cannot let go." Eliza felt a pang of sympathy, recognizing the shared pain of loss that transcended their opposing sides. Yet she knew she could not allow emotion to cloud her quest for justice. "And do you believe hiding the truth will honor their memory?" she pressed gently. "Or could it be the very revelation that sets the world on a path toward healing and peace?" "There is risk in both paths," he conceded, glancing toward the river as if seeking answers in its depths. "But perhaps there is a middle ground." The tension between them eased, replaced by a tentative understanding. Eliza sensed a shift, a possibility that Garreau might yet become an ally rather than an adversary. "Then let's find it together," she proposed, extending a hand as a gesture of goodwill. "For the sake of those we've lost, and for the world we hope to save." "Very well," he agreed, taking her hand with a firm grip. "But know this, Dr. Monroe, the path we embark on will not be easy." There, betrayals unveiled, the dimly lit basement of the Alt Berlin safe house was filled with the hum of old machinery, shadows dancing across the walls as a single light bulb swung from the ceiling. Eliza paced the room, her footsteps echoing off the concrete floor, while Dmitri sat at the makeshift table, rifling through a stack of documents. "Dmitri, this is our only chance. If we don't find the connection between the conspiracy and the military powers, everything we've worked for will be in vain. I know, Eliza, but remember, every step we take brings us closer to danger. As Dmitri uttered those words, the door slammed open and a tall figure stepped into the room. The man, dressed in a weathered trench coat, carried an air of familiarity. Dmitri Reznikov, I should have known you'd be tangled in this mess. Mikhail, what are you doing here? Mikhail's eyes glinted with a mix of betrayal and satisfaction, as if he had been waiting for this moment. I came to warn you, but it seems you've dug your grave deeper than I imagined. You've been exposed, Dmitri. The conspiracy knows you're leaking information. What? Dmitri, is this true? Eliza, it's not what it seems. I was trying to protect us, to divert their attention. Eliza's mind raced, her trust in Dmitri wavering as she processed the revelation. You should have told me. We were supposed to be partners in this. I was going to, but I needed to make sure it was safe first. Mikhail stepped closer, his voice dripping with disdain. You think you can play both sides, Dmitri? The architect has eyes everywhere. You've put us all at risk. Then we need to act fast. Mikhail, if what you say is true, we have no time to waste. Eliza's resolve hardened, the urgency of their mission clear in her eyes. The room was filled with a tense silence as the weight of betrayal hung heavy in the air. Eliza, I swear on everything I hold dear, I will fix this. Then we move forward, but this time, no more secrets. With a nod, Eliza picked up the scattered documents, her mind already forming a plan to outmaneuver the unseen forces closing in around them. The trio moved through Alt Berlin's narrow alleys, their breaths visible in the cold night air. Mikhail led the way, his familiarity with the city's underbelly guiding them through a maze of hidden routes. There's a safe house not far from here. We can regroup there and plan our next move. And you trust this place, Mikhail? As much as one can trust anything in this city. They reached an inconspicuous door, and Mikhail knocked in a coded sequence. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room crowded with old furniture and stacks of yellowed papers. This is where we plan to strike back? It might not look like much, but it's safe from prying eyes. As they settled in, Eliza spread out the documents on a table, her fingers tracing the lines of text that hinted at the conspiracy's vast network. We need to find the architect's next target. If we can disrupt their plans, we might stand a chance. And we need allies. We can't do this alone. There are others who would join us if they knew the stakes. The room buzzed with a renewed energy, the gravity of their mission binding them together in a fragile alliance. They worked late into the night, the glow of a single lamp illuminating their determined faces as they plotted their next move against the shadows threatening to engulf them. Dawn broke over Alt Berlin, casting a pale light over the city. Eliza stood by the window, watching the streets below begin to stir with life. Mikhail, how did you find us? I never stopped watching, Eliza. I've been keeping tabs on Dmitri ever since we parted ways. And what made you decide to come forward now? Because I believe in what you were trying to do. We all know what happens if the architect revealed. The cold wind whipped through the narrow streets of Alt Berlin, whispering secrets Eliza was determined to uncover. She pulled her coat tighter around her body, the weight of her discoveries pressing heavily on her shoulders. We have to be close, Dmitri, she said, her gaze fixed on the shadowed entrance of the dilapidated building ahead. This has to be where the architect is hiding. Are you sure about this? Dmitri asked, his eyes scanning their surroundings for any sign of danger. We've been led astray before. Eliza paused, recalling the map encrypted with clues that had led them here, each symbol a piece of the puzzle pointing to this very location. It's the only lead we have left, she replied firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. They approached the entrance, their footsteps echoing ominously in the deserted alley. Eliza's heart pounded in her chest as she reached for the door, its rusty hinges protesting loudly as it swung open. Stay close, she whispered, stepping into the darkness. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of damp wood. They moved cautiously through the labyrinthine corridors, each turn bringing them closer to the truth, yet further into danger. Do you hear that? Dmitri asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Voices, up ahead. Eliza nodded, straining her ears to catch the muffled conversation. They crept forward, the voices growing louder with each step until they reached a partially open door. Peering through the crack, Eliza's breath caught in her throat. Inside, a group of men and women huddled around a table, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of a single lamp. At the head of the table sat a figure cloaked in shadow, the architect. "Our work is not yet done," the architect declared, his voice both commanding and weary. "The world must never know the power of the atom." Eliza felt Dimitri's hand on her shoulder, his grip tightening as they listened. The architect's presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a man who had altered the course of history with a single decision. Why suppress the technology? Eliza whispered to herself, struggling to understand the motivations behind such a monumental conspiracy. As if sensing their presence, the architect turned his head, his eyes meeting Eliza's through the sliver of the doorway. "We have guests," he announced. The room erupted into chaos as the occupants sprang to their feet. Eliza and Dimitri stumbled backward, their escape route blocked by two burly guards. "Bring them in," the architect ordered, his voice cutting through the commotion. Eliza and Dimitri were ushered into the room, the occupants regarding them with a mixture of curiosity and hostility. Eliza's mind raced as she searched for a way to turn the situation to their advantage. "Dr. Monroe," the architect said, his tone laced with a hint of admiration. "I've been expecting you." "You know who I am," Eliza replied, holding her chin high despite the danger. "Then you know I won't stop until I uncover the truth." The architect leaned back in his chair, studying her with an enigmatic smile. "The truth is a slippery thing," he said. "What you seek is not as simple as right or wrong." Eliza's mind whirled, the architect's words echoing in her ears. She had expected to find a villain, but instead, she faced a man who viewed himself as a guardian of the world. "So you believe yourself a savior?" Dimitri interjected, his voice sharp. "How many lives have been lost because of your actions?" "More would have been lost," the architect replied, his gaze steady. "The power of the atom is a Pandora's box. Once opened, it cannot be closed." Eliza's resolve wavered as she considered the architect's perspective. Could it be true? Could suppressing nuclear technology have spared the world? The battle for truth. Night had fallen over Alt Berlin, casting long shadows through the narrow alleys where Eliza hurried, her breath visible in the crisp air. Her heart pounded in her chest, not from the cold, but from the weight of the momentous broadcast she was about to make. "This is for everyone who's ever been silenced," she whispered to herself, clutching the stack of papers tightly against her chest. The clandestine radio station was hidden in the cellar of an unassuming bookshop, a relic from a pre-war era when ideas flowed more freely. As she descended the creaking wooden stairs, Dimitri was already there, adjusting dials and checking connections. "The signal is strong tonight. We have a clear window," he said, his voice tinged with urgency. "Thank you, Dimitri. We couldn't have come this far without you." The room was dimly lit, the only source of light a flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. Maps and documents were scattered across a worn table, each piece a fragment of the truth she was about to unleash. "Are you ready for this? Once it goes out, there's no turning back." "I've never been more ready. The world needs to know what's really happening." Eliza took her place before the microphone, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the papers. She closed her eyes, drawing a deep breath to steady herself. "This is Eliza Monroe, broadcasting from Alt Berlin. What you are about to hear is the truth they tried to bury." Her voice echoed through the room and beyond, carried over the airwaves to ears eager for the truth. She began to recount the conspiracy, detailing the sabotage of the Manhattan Project, the hidden agendas of world powers, and the profiteering that fueled an endless cycle of war. "For decades, we've been pawns in a game played by those in power. We deserve to know the truth. We deserve peace." As Eliza's words flowed, Dimitri monitored the equipment, his eyes flickering between the dials and a small, grimy window that offered a view of the street. "We need to be prepared to move quickly. This broadcast will draw attention." Outside, the quiet street remained deceptively calm, but Eliza knew the storm was coming. Her voice carried on, unwavering, as she unveiled the evidence that linked governments and corporations to the war machine. These documents prove that the very institutions meant to protect us have been complicit in perpetuating conflict for profit. We must hold them accountable. The broadcast continued, a beacon of hope for those who believed in a future free from the shadows of manipulation and deceit. But Eliza's courage came at a cost. We are not powerless. Together, we can dismantle this machine. Stand with us. Demand change. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from above. Dimitri's eyes widened, and he gestured for Eliza to wrap it up. Eliza, they're here. We need to go now. Eliza finished her broadcast with a promise of more revelations to come, then switched off the microphone. She grabbed the papers, stuffing them into her satchel as Dimitri led the way to a hidden exit. As they emerged into the alley, the distant wail of sirens grew louder, closing in. Eliza and Dimitri sprinted through the maze of streets, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. We can't lead them back to the others. We need to split up. I'll draw them away. You head to the rendezvous. Without another word, Eliza darted down a narrow passage, her heart racing as she navigated the cobblestone labyrinth. The shadows seemed to close in around her, but she pressed on, driven by the knowledge that her message was out there. Sirens blared closer, and the sound of boots pounding against the pavement reverberated through the alley. Eliza ducked into a side street, her breath coming in sharp gasps as she searched for a way out. A new dawn. The morning sun cast its golden hue over the cobblestone streets of Alt-Berlin, a city that had seen too much turmoil and too little peace. Eliza Monroe stood on the balcony of her modest apartment, her eyes tracing the path of the light as it crept across the urban landscape, erasing the shadows of the night. It's like watching the world wake up from a long nightmare, Eliza murmured to herself, the words carrying a weight born of recent revelations. Down below, the city was stirring to life. Market vendors set up their stalls, their voices mingling with the distant hum of trams. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh bread from a nearby bakery. A new chapter for us all, Dmitry Reznikov's voice came from behind her. He joined her at the balcony, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Do you think it will last? She asked, her voice tinged with doubt. It must, he replied, gazing out at the horizon. You've given people the truth, Eliza. That's a powerful thing. Eliza nodded, recalling the tumultuous journey that had brought them here. She thought of Nuru Okoye, leading the charge against colonial powers in Africa, and of the many dissidents around the world who had dared to stand with her. We can't go back to the way things were, she said, more to herself than to Dmitri. There's no room for ignorance, not anymore. As if in response to her words, the distant sound of a siren wailing in the city reminded them of the precarious balance they were trying to maintain. The Franco-American forces were still a looming threat, their power unchecked by the recent broadcast. The Admiral won't give up easily, Dmitri warned, his expression darkening. Garot's not one to let go of power without a fight. Then we must be vigilant, she declared, turning to face him fully, and prepared for whatever comes next. They stood in silence for a moment, the enormity of their task settling between them like a living thing. Yet amid the uncertainty, there was a shared conviction that bolstered their spirits. As the morning wore on, Eliza and Dmitri left the apartment, making their way through the bustling streets. They were no longer fugitives in hiding, but figures of hope for many, faces recognized by those who had heard their message. Good day to you, Miss Monroe, a vendor called out, waving as they passed. Keep fighting the good fight. Thank you, Eliza replied, a genuine smile breaking through her composed exterior. The support of the people was a balm to her worried mind. As they continued, they noticed a group of children playing a game of tag, their laughter a sweet reminder of innocence untouched by the world's darker machinations. It was a sound that seemed to brighten the very air around them. It's for them, you know, Dmitri said, nodding towards the children. For the future. Yes, Eliza agreed, her voice filled with quiet resolve. For them. The day unfolded with a sense of purpose. Meetings were held in secret corners of the city, where plans for a new world were drafted, ideas exchanged in hushed tones. Each gathering was a step towards dismantling the old structures of power. We must not let fear dictate our actions, Nuru's voice echoed in Eliza's mind from their last conversation. Courage is the only path forward. As evening approached, Eliza found herself standing before a large map pinned to the wall of their temporary headquarters. It was covered in markings, each representing a hotspot of resistance or a potential ally. We need to consolidate our efforts, she mused aloud, tracing her finger along a line connecting Alt Berlin to New London. Unite these scattered forces into a cohesive front. Agreed, Dmitri replied, stepping up beside her. But we must be careful, the enemy is watching. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted their planning. Eliza exchanged a glance with Dimit. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and tell your friends about my listening library.